Nora Johnson. I'm a ruling elder commissioner from Great Rivers Presbytery, and my home church is Northminster Presbyterian Church. I was a member of the Confessions Committee, and so I just want to explain what we did. We dealt with the Heidelberg Catechism, and I just wanted to clarify that what was decided and is going to come before you is a retranslation of the original German and the Latin translation from the year that it was written. And it's an amazing academic work of what they've done. And no one from that task force purported that what they were doing was an interpretation of the author's intent. It's very much intended to be a translation of what it was before. So we heard a lot from people who haven't memorized, or parts of it memorized, and they're bummed that it's going to change. But I just thought that might help you with an understanding of the changed language that you'll see. Also, we addressed the Belhar Confession, and you probably remember voting on whether or not to approve that in the Book of Confessions in this past General Assembly cycle. And what came before our committee was just to decide if we should start that process over again. We can't just send it to the presbyteries right away. It has to start from scratch. And I actually spoke on the plenary floor saying that we just said no. I don't think it's time for us to deal with this again immediately. But it was decided to begin that process again, and the main argument for that was that it felt with NFOG and with 10A that it didn't get the attention or the education that was necessary. It kind of got, didn't get, the attention that was necessary for it to be considered appropriately. So you can look to be seeing that again. And we were asked to reflect on what big thing we were left with, or what had the most impact on us. And while it was fantastic to be as Presbyterians again, and I knew some of the people who were there as staff people, but with so many votes being so close, it was obvious that we're a divided church. I know that sounds, pretty obvious, but we now have the votes to prove it. And I mean, even on some of them at 50-50%, when you got to the votes, there was only 2 votes difference. And so our church is divided, and we have an amazing Presbyterian, amazing synod, and I'm so thankful for them. And reflecting on previous votes that have been taken on difficult issues in our presbytery, it sounds like we're very representative of the greater church. And I just found it very interesting speaking with commissioners. When we were traveling, we were hanging out at the airport, there were a ton of us there. And just to hear how people felt that it was such a conservative General Assembly, but then the flip side being that conservatives didn't feel that way. I think that what ended up happening was that the church, we made some decisions, like with the Caterpillar not to divest, and that was awesome, but with other decisions, like with gay marriage and redefining marriage, instead of taking a stand on marriage as it is now, or changing the definition of marriage, we pretty much bought some time. And it is time for us to study, and I would encourage all congregations to do that. And I know that my congregation will be doing that. But it didn't feel like a definite stand was taken either way. So I can guarantee that the General Assembly is going to be addressing that the next time. But thank you so much for this privilege to go and be a part of this amazing church that we're a part of.
I'm Sue Krummel, and I was a minister commissioner to this assembly, which was my 18th assembly of all things. I've done all kinds of things at the General Assembly. This was actually the 3rd time that I've been a commissioner. First, I want to tell you that 2 of our commissioners couldn't be with us today while we're filming this because they had family matters to attend to. One of them is Rick Tyndall, and the other is Charlotte Perchner, who was the vice moderator of one of the commissioner committees at the General Assembly, so she had quite a leadership role at the assembly this year. I wanted to tell you that I was proud of all of our commissioners. One of the commissioners from whom you've already heard, Nick Knott, was quoted in newspapers internationally after he made a speech with regard to divestment. And so I thought we were represented well as a presbytery at this General Assembly. As I mentioned, this was my 18th assembly, and so a couple of the things that I noticed are things that I hope that people will be working on from here forward in order to get ready for the next assemblies. One of those is that if you compare what happens at General Assembly and in the Presbyterian Church to the way that many governments within the United States function, then what we have at General Assembly is essentially a legislature made up of all freshman legislators. Almost everybody who's a commissioner to General Assembly has never been there before. And if they represent the Presbyterian Church at large, then most of them did not grow up in the Presbyterian Church. And yet we expect them to handle 800 pieces of business, many of them about things that the commissioners have never thought about before. We need to figure out some way to have a balance in the way we make decisions between having this group of people who represent the church at large. We need to add to that some way of having something that would be like a Senate or a House of Lords, a group of wise elders who can help respond to the business before us. The other thing I noticed at this assembly is that there had been several commissions appointed between the last assembly and this one in order to do specific work. They talked about special offerings, they talked about mid-councils, they talked about biennial assemblies. In almost every case, the recommendations that those groups brought to this assembly were pushed aside by the commissioner committees and by the assembly itself. They were not taken as seriously as they might have been. And so I hope we can find a way to help commissioners understand that when these commissions appointed by an assembly in the past report to their committees, it is as if you're sitting in your session meeting and the Christian Education Committee is reporting to you. These are people who have concentrated on special work that has been important to former assemblies, and they need to be taken more seriously than they were by all of us at this assembly. Now, you probably have heard much of what we've said already from other news sources, but if you need more information about this, you can go to the pcusa.org website to find out things. Of course, you can ask any of us who were commissioners, and we will also, most of us, be available at the October Presbytery meeting to answer any further questions that you have. Thank you again for sending all of us as your commissioners to this assembly.